right, everyone. So I am in 3.2.2. We're looking and capturing these baseline files. So overall, our goal is that we are wanting to create a baseline of network traffic. And what do we mean by baseline is what's kind of the normal day-to-day things that are happening at this water treatment facility. So we can determine and we can figure out, okay, what's going to be different here when we're seeing some malicious activity happen in our next section. So we're transferring files, we're getting an answer key essentially, that's going to help us down the road. Okay, that's going to help us with some of the network traffic that's happening and maybe help us identify some suspicious activity. Nothing suspicious is happening here. We are just identifying what the normal should be. Okay, so we've all gone through, we hopefully have these two baseline files in our OneDrive right now, our baseline 1 and our baseline 2. So you should have a cybersecurity folder. We've got our pump monitor for baseline 1 and our pump PLC for baseline 1 as well. Now, I have 4 of these. They're the exact same files. Again, just that generic data pull that we've got. All right. So what we are needing to go in and do right now, because we've gone through all of these steps, I've transferred these files onto my local machine. I'm on step 17 right now. But a couple things that we need to do is we need to go in and reestablish that TCP dump session on our pump monitor. So we need to go through steps 2 through 4 again. Hopefully you have your reference sheet out for that command when we are capturing some of that baseline packet information. This is just kind of a listening session that we're opening up in our pump monitor. So I'm going to go into my connections folder. If I'm back on step number 2, 3, and 4 here, I need to open up my pump monitor. I'm logging in as user and password. Okay. And then we're at that user name there. So we're good to go. Now, again, we are going to be capturing these different packets of our information with this sudo TCP dump. I can copy and paste this from either my important reference information or select all that, or from my actual notebook here. But when I want to paste this into our system, I need to go into system, send text to lab. I'm going to paste that in there. Now, remember, we don't want to have that $sign before. And let's keep our naming pretty consistent here. So I'm going to say Rachel Bosman, pump monitor. And now this is a baseline 2. Make sure that we have switched that to baseline 2, this PCAP file. And we've got all the rest of that stuff there. So then I'm going to go in and send and paste. And if I right click and press enter, it's going to ask me for that password again. And remember, this is just password. Very cyber secure. So we're listening to our system and we're capturing some of these packets. Now, again, because we're starting this on another day, we need to go in and I said this the other day, we need to go back in and we need to go through steps 7 through 11 again to get that pump log. So I'm going to scroll back up, and it is tedious, right? No one's denying that. Then we are going to go in and establish another connection through our pump monitor. Okay, now this is going to be user and password again. And then we're going to get that FTP command. So if I list this out right away, I see that I do not have, I've got that baseline 2 file that I just made, but I don't have that pump log. And that's what we need to transfer from that pump PLC host to our pump monitor. All right. So I'm going to go in. I see that I don't have that pump log there that we are getting here in step 10. So I just need to quick transfer that file, right? This is kind of like our FileZilla, moving files from one computer to the next, from one host to the next. That's what we're doing here. So I'm going to FTP to 10205. That is our IP address for our pump PLC. Okay. That's where we're wanting to get that file from our pump PLC. So again, those IP addresses are so important. And then I press enter. Now it's connected, but then we have to put those credentials in there. We can't let any rando come in and take all of our good stuff. So then I'm going to type in vagrant and vagrant because that is our username and password for our pump PLC. And like it says, we've just opened that FTP session. That's where we're transferring files, right? File transfer protocol. That's what FTP stands for. And it's listening, that TCP dump is listening, all that good stuff. And now let's list out, because we're hypothetically now in our pump PLC, if we list this out, now we can see that we've got that pump_log text. That's exactly what we want to have. All right. That's what I need to move from this pump PLC back into my pump monitor. So if I've got that FTP selected, now let's just ask for it. Let's use that command of get pump_log.txt. And it should say that our transfer is complete. All right. There's a lot of stuff that happens here. But if we see transfer complete, we're good to go. So now I can quit that FTP session. So I'm going to say quit and okay, goodbye. And now let's list this out. And now we can see in our pump monitor that now we have that pump_log.txt and that previous baseline 2 file that we have that's capturing the information that's happening here. Life is good. So that's that first step that we need to do automatically before we continue, is get that pump log TXT file from our pump PLC. So that stuff was hanging out here in my pump PLC, and then we transfer that to our pump monitor. Okay, now I can close out of that second pump monitor session that I have where we did that file transfer, because we don't need that anymore. MBD, but you want to make sure that we still have this TCP dump listening and paying attention to the traffic that is happening. Okay. So I'm going to minimize that. I want to keep that hanging out. Again, keeping track of my pump monitor, what those actual, what hosts that we're on. We got to pay attention to that. And now I'm on step 18, where I need to open up that connections folder. And now we're going to remote desktop in to this web 01. Okay. If we think, and if we look back at our description, our target Windows 01, that's where we're at right now. Okay, we have access to Pump PLC and we have access to Pump Monitor. Now, Web 01 is going to be that remote or an extra type of thing, that remote desktop connection that we need to go in and establish a connection there. Now, this might take a little second, so I'm going to click on Connect, and then it's going to connect to 10207. Again, that's that IP address for our Web 01. And that's just going to be, this Web 01 is kind of a user-friendly, right? It's not a Linux operating system. It's a user-friendly, detailed list of what's going on in that water treatment facility. So we got to take a second here and be listening to and get connected to that desktop. All right, now I am here in my Web 01. And again, we're on that remote desktop, so we have to make sure that we are looking up at the top here. I should be on 10207. Again, that's that IP address for that Web 01 host. And this is where we're going to start that Wireshark capture, stuff that we did back in Unit 2. So TCP dump back in our normal target Windows is listening to what's going on. And now we need to have Wireshark to be listening and keeping track of what's going on with our traffic in our virtual lab and in our target Windows 01, okay? And so we're listening to all that network traffic. So we are going to go and open up Wireshark again here. So I click on my Wireshark icon, and on that welcome screen, it looks like we need to select the network connection Ethernet 4. Our filter is not port 3389 or port 2020 or 22, excuse me. We are not wanting to capture any network or traffic that's on the lab or in target Windows 01. Okay, so let's make sure that we are going to select that Ethernet 4 option. And then in our capture session, we are going to say not port 3389 or port 22. Okay, we're in Ethernet 4, and I'm going to go in and press enter. And now this is starting to capture that different network traffic that is going on. So that's step number 19. I'm going to minimize my Web 01 connection. Again, I need to make sure that I'm at Web 01. I'm going to minimize that, and I'm back to my normal target Windows. Okay. Now it's telling me to start another pump monitor connection from that connections folder. And we are wanting to FTP and connect to Web 01, that remote site that we had just checked. So I need to go in and FTP to 10.2.0.7. Again, there's a lot of things happening. I've got my pump monitor listening. Don't do anything with that. I've got my remote connection established. I need to go back into pump monitor, open that up. Now it's not telling me what my username and password is, but I'm going to go user and password because I know that off the top of my head, or I go in and check. No big deal. Now we will start that FTP to 10.2.0.7 to make that connection. Now it wants that name. And so for step 22, we are going to type in our username is anonymous. And then that password, we're just going to press enter. And now we are in that FTP with that target Windows. I would go in and add, guys, I would go in and add that Web 01 login. Okay, we've got our anonymous and no password. We're going to need that when we are FTPing from our pump monitor to our Web 01 machine. That's that stuff still here in 3.2.2. So add that to your important reference information so we've got that stuff taken care of. All right, so we've got our anonymous. We press that enter key. Okay, we cannot tell here, but that original TCP dump that we had established and Wireshark that's happening in Web 01 are listening and they are paying attention to this transfer that we're having. Okay, so with our FTP prompt, we need to change the remote directory to the FTP root as shown. Okay, you must place the log files in this specific directory. We got to keep in mind with that. So I'm going to highlight that because this is where we're wanting our log files to reside. All right, so we want those to reside on and for that Web 01 homepage. So we need to change the directory. Hopefully we are knowing that change directory is CD. Now we're going to change our directory to inetpub/FTP root. I press enter there, and it tells me that my command is successful. Awesome. Now, when we do this file transfer, we're going to use this put command now, that pump log that we had already snatched before. Now we are going to use that put command to copy our file from our pump monitor to Web 01. Okay, we have established this FTP connection again, and now we're going to be throwing that file there. So I'm going to say use a put command, pump_log.txt. Again, that was in our pump monitor before. I'm going to put that in that specific directory that I had already previously established. Okay, then again, this is just that normal network traffic that we're wanting to capture to have that baseline of what's normal so we can compare that to other activities that's not going to be normal. Okay, and again, it says that transfer is complete. Cool beans. Again, how can we verify that we transferred this successfully? Let's ls this thing. Okay, we should be in our different directory, right? We should see that file pump_log.txt should be there. If it's not, go back a couple of steps and check it out. Okay, and see if you missed anything. But we got to go slow and we got to read. Now, when I'm on step 25 in that FTP session, let's just quit that. We've done that transfer file, and it tells us goodbye, and we are good. Now we can close out that new pump monitor session that we had just established for that file transfer. I'm going to close out of that. Okay, yes, I am sure I want to close. And now we also are going to stop this TCP dump, okay, on step 27 from that initial pump monitor that we had established right at the beginning of the day, that baseline 2. So I'm going to go back into my user at pump monitor, and let's just go and click on Control C, and that's going to tell me that I've got 159 packets that were captured that was listening to that connection from my pump monitor to my Web 01. That was paying attention, and that was giving me a baseline for what that should be looking like, and that's what we are calling this baseline 2. So now we've got our next baseline file. Okay, so I'm just going to go minimize that. We don't know if we're going to need that here in a second. And on step 28, I need to maximize my Web 01 connection again. So here on my remote connection, I've got a lot of things happening here with Wireshark. So I'm going to save that capture file. I'm going to stop the capture. Boom, stop. And let's go File, save as. Okay, so Control Shift S or save as. And the other thing that we need to be paying attention to is where are we saving this file? Okay, we're going to change our file name. We need to change the file type. I think that's what a lot of people maybe skim over. And we're going to save that capture file as your name. So R. Bosman underscore web 01 underscore baseline 2. And we need to change it to be a Wireshark TCP dump. TCP dump. So I'm going to click on that drop down, that save as file, save as that type. It's a PCAP file, and now let's change that to a TCP dump. Okay, so it's compatible with some other files that we've got. Okay, then I'm going to go in and click on save. And I'm going to minimize my Web01 connection. Okay, so I'm just going to go up to the top, minimize that stuff. And now we got to transfer our files to that local school machine, our local school machine. And that's when we're using this PowerShell situation again. So you can go in, again, you should have all of these steps listed for our PowerShell. We need to make sure that we change it to binary, grab those files, and put it into our OneDrive. So let's go back. Let's open up a little PowerShell action here. Again, we are on our normal target Windows 01, not our remote desktop. Do not have that blue bar up at the top. We do not want that. I minimize. I'm opening up my PowerShell here. It's going to give me a second. And I'm in my C users administrator thing. Okay, so let's go in and FTP to our to transfer that file. Okay, so we have to make sure that we change that to be binary, and we are going to make sure that we connect to our pump monitor first. So that's that IP address of 10206. So I'm going to go in 10206. I'm FTPing there. We've got that username. That's our pump monitor. So I'm going to say user and password. My login is successful. Now do not forget that we need to click on that binary. That's something that I forget, or type in binary, or else we're not going to be able to read those specific files. So then I'm going to type in binary, and it's switching to my binary mode. And now we got to use that get command to transfer the baseline file. And we have to use that exact same file name that we had before. Now I might go in and I'm going to list this out because it gives me the info, right? I can copy and paste here in PowerShell a lot easier than I can copy and paste in a Linux operating system. So I'm going to copy this. Okay, Rachel Bosman underscore pumpmon underscore baseline 2 PCAP. And I'm going to issue that git command and paste that. Then I'm going to press enter and it should say, oh, cool beans, transfer complete. Now, something that I like to do is also just go into my local drive here, my users, my administrator, and now I can see that that baseline 2 file, that PCAP file, or that Wireshark is captured. Okay, and that's just kind of my initial baseline data. I like to see that there, and maybe I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so I can see it automatically add from that Web01 with our next FTP session that we are going to create, okay? Or capture or get those files essentially. All right, so I've got my file. I've got my baseline 2. Now let's go in and quit this FTP session because now we need to establish another FTP with Web01. And now we're going to take that Wireshark file that we had saved in that ISSA tools folder, and we're going to go in and do that. So now I'm going to go in and create an FTP to Web01, which is 10207. Whoops. 10207. All right, we've got that username is anonymous, password, we're going to press enter, and FTP is there. Again, we got to switch to binary, so it all works out. And in step E, it says that our Wireshark capture files are saved into a specific folder. So what we need to do is we need to go in and change those directories. Now, hopefully we kind of recall where that was saved. I talked about it when we were in Wireshark, then we needed to save it as that TCP file. And you were looking in that specific folder. So now let's go in and change our directories to ISSA tools. And I'm going to try to list this out and see if we have our file there. And great Scott, we do. Life is good. So I've got that ISSA tools. I've changed that directory and I'm listing that out. Oh, sweet. Now I see this R. Bosman Web 01 baseline 2 PCAP file. Okay, that is what I want. So I copied that and now I'm going to get that file, that Web 01 baseline 2. Let's press enter. And again, it says transfer complete. Okay, so then I'm going to go in and quit that session. And it tells me goodbye. And now I can see that that Web 01 baseline 2 file is also right beneath my pump monitor baseline 2. Exactly what we want. Exactly what we want. Now let's go in and transfer these things. Okay, so from my target Windows 01 to my machine, that's when we're hitting up guacamole here. Okay, so I'm going to select by holding down the Shift key, selecting both of those files. I'm going to Control C, or I can always go in and right click copy. Make sure that they're both selected. You can go one by one, but that's not super efficient. Or I can select both of them and drag and drop that into downloads. I do not care. Once we have those in downloads, I see those down at the bottom. Remember, you might have a box that pops up that says, "Oh, make sure that you're wanting to do multiple downloads. Is this true?" Allow that, okay? And if I now minimize my session here, or I show these in a folder, okay? These are in my actual local machine folder. Now, there's a lot of folders that we got going on here, so it's going to take a second. I know that this is mine because it's in my Rachel Bosman. I see all of my other stuff that I'm looking at here. Anywho, I'm going to go back and select both of these two PCAP files, my Rachel Bosman PumpMon and my Web 01. I'm mad at myself that I didn't change that. I can rename that so it's consistent. Anyway, copy that. Throw this into my cybersecurity folder that I have created in my OneDrive. Paste that in there. And now I've got my pump monitor baseline 1, my pump PLC baseline 1, and this Web 01 baseline 2. I am done. Step 31 is good. Now, the other thing that they are kind of wanting you to do right now is update this network topology diagram. We might do that another day to really talk and see what happened, but we will see what we can do. So we're kind of drawing out the information or that file transfer that we got from pump monitor to that Web 01. Okay, so 32 and beyond, we are just going to go in and look at some of that water treatment facility website on this Web 01. Now, it tells us to recall that operators use that browser in Web 01 to access the website, look at historical information, and pay attention to what's going on with that network traffic in a way that's not in a Linux operating system. This is a lot for any person to pay attention to. So there needs to be a web browser that makes things easy for these people, okay? So step 32, we are going to go in and connect to that Web 01 if we needed to. So if that accidentally closed for whatever reason, we're going to go back into Web 01 and establish a Wireshark session, as before, okay? So this is back in my local, back in Target Windows 01. I'm going to minimize that and reopen up Web 01. Okay, so I've got this baseline 2 PCAP file, and I just want to, it's stopped, it's not capturing anything more, but let's go in and let's start a new Wireshark session. Now, I can start capturing packets, but I want to make sure that it has that same network connection. So just for my own crazy person's sake of mind, I'm going to close out of Wireshark here and go in and establish a new thing here. So I'm going to minimize Wireshark, or I'm going to close out of Wireshark here. I'm still in Web 01. Now let's open Wireshark back up again, because I just didn't want to mess it up. We've done a lot of work. I don't need to do all this extra stuff here. And so now I'm back in my welcome screen. Okay, I need to select that network connection of Ethernet 4 and that exact same filter. So not port 3389 or port 22. Okay, so I'm going to press enter. I was in that Ethernet 4, and now it is starting that capture. So there are things that are going on that it's paying attention to. We're going to be okay. So now I'm starting that capture. I'm minimizing my Web01 connection, and I'm going to minimize this PowerShell. We're going to go back and we're going to use that here in a second, but who cares? So I am back in target Windows 01. I'm back to the norm, and I'm going to go in and launch this Chrome browser so I can access the internet. Okay, and up at the top here, right, we've got all this good stuff. Oh, we've got our little city water treatment. I bet that brings us to where we need to be. I'm going to type in that IP address for Web01 on step 35, 10207. And this is, like it says, that mock-up of that facility's homepage. So we can see that it's our city water treatment system, 10207, and it's looking at what it should actually be. Now, it might take a second to get loaded, but we need to open that up because that's going to show some different network traffic in that wire capture session of what happened. So just pause, take a look at the website. Probably don't need to click around a whole lot, but that's kind of our normal thing that normal people are going to go see. Now, this has taken a while for me. Hopefully it doesn't take as long for you guys, but it should say information about like a water treatment facility, and you'll be, there we go, our city water treatment system, our beautiful little mission statement. We can look at monitor information. We can look at maintenance types of records here. So obviously this is still under construction, but someone would be going in and clicking on these different links and kind of seeing what's happening here. All right. So that's what we've got here. I can close that browser. That just created some traffic in that we're going to be pulling from our Web01. So, and capture that in our wire capture. Okay, so on step 37, I'm going back into my 10207, and let's go in and stop this Wireshark capture here. So we're going to go save our file. I'm clicking on file, save as again, right? We're back in that ISSA tools, right? And again, we need to make sure that we are changing that to be that TCP dump, okay? So I'm changing this file name to be Rachel Bosman, Web 01. So I'm keeping track of, okay, what's this data being pulled? And now this is my baseline 3. And using that drop down, and this is our TCP dump, okay? As that save as type. Make sure that we're at that TCP dump. It's still a PCAP file, but it's going to be that type of structure. So I'm going to go in and click save, and I can minimize my Web01 connection. Cool. Again, we got to keep moving here. We cannot be wasting time, or else we got to do all of that stuff again. So we're almost done. Bear with me. Now let's hit up PowerShell again. Okay, we're back into PowerShell. We're transferring those files, and this is the crazy steps. We're transferring those files from PowerShell onto our local school computer. Let's go in and create that FTP session again, but now we need to connect to Web01. I don't think you guys need to remember everything, especially if we have this written down, but our Web01 IP address that we need to type in is 10207. So I'm going to go in and type in space 10207. 10207, cool beans. And that is starting that session. We need to put in our username. And again, we haven't done this as much, so I need to remember that our Web01, it's anonymous. Okay, so I'm going to type in anonymous, press enter, no password, we're logged in. Change it to binary. So we can get our stuff. Now, we also, it looks here in step 2, we need to change directories to ISSA tools. So I'm going to cd ISSA_tools. Okay, that's changing that directory. And let's try to list this out. And now I can see if I'm in my ISSA tools or ISSA tools, I've got this baseline 3 PCAP file. Now I've got that baseline 2 PCAP file that I had created a few steps ago. That's cool. We've already transferred that. We don't really care about that. Now I'm going to go in and transfer this to baseline 3, but make sure that we change it to binary first, and now I'm going to get this baseline 3 capture. It's that. I'm getting Rachel Bosman Web 01 baseline 3 PCAP file from that web, and I'm going to press enter, and it should say transfer complete. Okay, so I can quit this FTP session right now. Now, again, you could have gotten all of those different baseline files already done and not transferred it, every single time, but that's totally up to you. All right, I'm back in my administrator. This is where all my stuff is. C users administrator. I go to my C drive, my users, and my administrator, and awesome. I've got my baseline 3 there. So I'm just going to go in, copy, and paste that to my downloads folder again. And we can see that right here. I will show that in my folder. Now I'm going to copy and paste that into my OneDrive and my cybersecurity folder. Now I've got those 3 baseline files. Okay, we've captured that general and that normal network traffic from our Web 01 server, like it says, from our pump monitor, our pump PLC. It's a lot of work that we've been doing, but we are going to be okay. Now make sure I have 2 extras. I've got 2 baseline ones here. You should only have 5 PCAP files. Our Web 01 baseline 3, our pump monitor baseline 2, our Web 01 baseline 2, our pump monitor baseline 1, and our pump PLC baseline 1. Now, these things are like, what the heck is going on? What are these things? Nothing is malicious right now. We are just getting that baseline. We are just getting the normal type of traffic that should be happening. And now what we're going to be doing in these next units is comparing these baseline files and throwing some red flags. What doesn't seem right compared to this baseline stuff? So our naming conventions are so important here. We have to make sure that it's baseline 3, baseline 2, whatever it is. And now we can start trying to figure out and find what are some of the malicious activities that we will be seeing. Okay? So I'm minimizing that. I'm closing out of my downloads folder. I've quit my PowerShell stuff. Let's go back in. Let us close out of our one. We've got all those files there. I can close out of my user pump monitor. Let's be done. Start having some fun here when we are looking and seeing what could be malicious. All right, here we go.